Hello, I'm GANEL-LYN, and this is Come Follow Me. We've had a couple of weeks to get through these 4 chapters because of conference. Wasn't conference wonderful? I hope that something that I share with you will add to your home discussion and your church discussion. And I know there's a lot of great resources and podcasts and videos. If you have found me on YouTube or on IGTV, thank you for those of you that have messaged appreciation and given feedback. I'm so grateful that it has helped even just one. That's my why. And I hope that something I share, I'm not some amazing scriptorian, but I hope something I share makes these chapters feel more personal to you. Matthew 16 through 17, Mark 9, and Luke 9. So as we go from the beginning here, Matthew 16, 1 through 12, this is the Pharisees and the Sadducees and being warned about the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And I really love studying this. I like to say beware of being a sign seeker, but make sure you are being a sign seer. And what do I mean by that? That the apostles had already forgotten the fishes and the loaves, that miracle. And so I think it's oftentimes with us that we have miracles happen, we forget them, and the next week we're already panicking about God and where he is at in our lives. The leaven of the Pharisees, I think it's important to know that this is regarding hypocrisy. And Jesus is saying to them, this is one of the things that I really want to root out, that Jesus came to teach some revolutionary concepts, and we're going to talk about some of them, but hypocrisy was one. Matthew 16, 13 through 17, there was still a debate about who Christ was. John the Baptist, was he Elias? Was he like Jeremiah? Many of the people thought he was a great prophet, maybe. And I think about Jewish people I've talked with and Muslims I've talked with, they believe even today that Jesus was a great prophet. But what was important here is that thou art the Christ is the difference between being a great prophet and Christ, the Savior. And I think it's important to know that as Jonah is referenced here, the symbolism of Jonah and his being swallowed up in the whale and then evicted out of this big fish is likened unto the Savior and his resurrection. And it's interesting in these chapters that the resurrection keeps being taught, and the apostles are kind of having a hard time understanding the concept of this resurrection. And then as we move into the church foundation being established, because Christ is getting ready for his death and his eventual resurrection. He sets up the first presidency with a line of authority and a delegation. And why, do you wonder, is he saying not to tell anyone? Because I think at this point, his notoriety has spread, and there are crowds, 4,000 and over 5,000 in other places. And he is trying to make sure that the people aren't looking for a king in the same way. He is the Savior preparing to atone and save them in a way different than they thought. This is during the time where there's this political battles going on, and the people are looking for a salvation from that. And Christ has come to fulfill something greater than this political unrest. As he goes forward, he rebukes Peter. And I think it's important to know, I was just talking about my infertility struggle with my son and that journey, and how God's view is different than man's view. And God sees a difference in the preparing a people for what's to come. And then as we go towards the end of chapter 16, he talks about, he invites the apostles to deny themselves and take up their cross, to lose their life for him, and then gain your whole soul. I think as we talk to the Sadducees and the Pharisees, the Sadducees were very free thinkers. They rejected the Old Testament, and they denied angels and rewards and resurrection. And so you can see why Jesus is trying to kind of root out that teaching, and he's trying to prepare them for this greater reward that is going to come. And he's asking the apostles to kind of look forward and not stay so in the now. And the rewards that we receive now, it's easy to get distracted. We want this many likes on Instagram. We want to sell this many books. We want to have a raise at work, and there's nothing wrong with that progression. But I think when I get distracted and I lose an eternal perspective and I'm looking for the rewards of this life, it can feel discouraging. And I love that Christ is saying your cross. As you go into the Mount of Transfiguration, he talks about this endowment of power. John the Baptist is there and Moses, and I think that's important to know that the law of Moses was being fulfilled. He goes on to talk about fasting and prayer and the faith of a mustard seed. And I've shared this before. This is my little mustard seed necklace. The casting out of unbelief. Unbelief is even deeper than what I think we realize. Unbelief is that, okay, I read these miracles in the scriptures for everyone else, but for me, I'm not sure they're going to happen. That is unbelief. And he's saying just have the littlest of faith, the littlest of leaven. The mustard seed bush then grows into this massive plant from this little seed. Then Jesus foretells again of his death and resurrection at the end of Matthew 17. He knew what would be, and he was trying to prepare his apostles. He pays the taxes. This is from Matthew, who's writing, and that's interesting because he was a former tax collector and he had to pay taxes just like us. And this was the temple tax, and he directs him to go to the fish, and there's the right amount exactly, not too much, not too little. And I think sometimes that's one of God's patterns. He gives us just enough for what we need. Sometimes we have extra, like with the fishes and the loaves, there was leftovers, right? But I love that this half shekel per year was usually what every Jew over 20 had to pay. And it was the exact amount in that fish. I love that miracle. And I love that Matthew's writing about it as a tax collector, and tax day is coming up for us here in America. So then the Mount of Transfiguration in Mark 9. Mark was a man of very specific few words. He kind of cut through all of the, all the extras. And so I think his books are interesting to read because of how specific he is. The keys were given in the Mount of Transfiguration. They heard the Father. He testified of Christ. They didn't understand this resurrection, but they saw him change and be transformed. Was this Elias Elijah or Elias? Elias is also a title, and that can be confusing as a forerunner. Elias is also known for Gabriel and Noah that came in the future, and Elias is the Greek form or Hebrew form of the word Elijah. So, and then there was an Elias that was a person. So if you look in the Bible dictionary under Transfiguration, it says that the most important event in the New Testament was the promised keys of the priesthood at the Mount of Transfiguration. These keys eventually were given to the quorum of the 12, and the Transfiguration happened around October, so 6 months before the death of Jesus. Doesn't that help you kind of understand context here? Elijah and Moses were also transfigured there, and the Father was bearing witness of the Son. A similar event happened in the Kirtland Temple. And I think that Bible dictionary is such a key to our studying the New Testament and the scriptures in general. They can give us such important information. Jesus heals this child, and he's a child of a Jewish father who's asking for compassion. And I think it's important to know that as he casts out these unclean spirits in his name, when we act in his name in faith, we will be given mighty miracles as well. As we go forward into the next chapter of Mark 9, I love that he's teaching the value of children. In Jesus's time, they were viewed as weak and burdensome to society. And I think Jesus was teaching us about humility, the salt of the earth people. And do you know that during this time, it was okay for children to be left on the side of the road if people didn't want to take care of them? And Jesus was specifically teaching the importance of children. And the apostles that were given these keys and power were being prepared and endowed the way we are also prepared and endowed, so that they could do what they needed to do once he was gone. John is beheaded, and in Luke 9, Herod is so afraid of this. Remember, his father was the one who wanted to kill all of the babies. So there was some prophesying going on about Mary and about Jesus and about all of this that's going to happen. And so Herod is afraid of that. And then once again, Christ says, take up your cross daily and follow him. That if we lose our life, we will find our life. And I think this is such a beautiful teaching, that the invitation for Christ is for us to let go and turn to him, and he will give us even more. I hope this has blessed you in some way.